Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our expert Q&A sponsored by Amneal and Kiowa Kirin. I'm Katrina Call, the Executive Director of the Brian Grant Foundation. As you may know, we empower people impacted by Parkinson's to lead active and fulfilling lives. If you haven't yet visited our website at briangrant.org, I encourage you to do so after today's presentation. If this is your first time joining us for an expert Q&A webcast, please take a moment to bookmark this page. We will be live streaming our webcasts the second Wednesday of every month from this page. So if you bookmark this page, you can come right back next month. To see the topics that are coming up for our expert Q&A webcasts, you can visit briangrant.org/events. And now I'm delighted to introduce Charlene Quaresma, Wealth Advisor and Director at Northwestern Mutual. Charlene will be going over the basics of financial planning with us today. During her presentation, if you have any questions, you can enter them into the chat function, and I will get them ready to go for a moderated Q&A toward the end of the hour. And with that, I am delighted to turn it over to Charlene.
Thank you so much, Katrina. Hello, Parkinson's community. So nice to be here with you today. One of the reasons why I got into wealth management and financial planning is actually because my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of 59. And, my parents are immigrants. When you think of the American dream, that's what they did, but they didn't have a plan. And I think that oftentimes people think you have to have lots of money to have a financial plan, but it's just a plan, and that's ultimately what it is. It's less about having to have lots of money to invest and more about what do I want to accomplish? What do I have coming in? Where are there gaps? And that's one of the reasons why I got into this business, is because no one really had these conversations with my family, and the conversations can be a little different. And knowing that this is to a broad audience of a variety of ages, I'm going to do some high-level planning, talk a little bit about the market, and then hopefully we can spend the majority of this time in the Q&A answering some questions. So again, some of you may already be retired, some of you may still be working. So there's definitely a broad range, and that's why financial planning is very personal and very individualistic. All right. So a couple of things, and this is, again, and some of the PDFs that I'm sharing will also be on the Brian Grant website with the recording. So you're more than welcome to download them at that time, because I might go through these a little fast because this is 14 pages. We're not going to read that. But basically, 5 critical questions for every investor. All right. What are the reasons for your investing? What are your investment options? What do you need your money to do? How do you feel about risk? And how involved do you want to be? So these are 5 basic questions everyone should be asking themselves. And as far as what are the reasons to invest, having an advisor is less about trying to beat the market or give you the highest rate of return. And it's more about giving you access to money in the most efficient ways possible when you need it. All right. So for example, if you want to purchase a home, that would be part of a financial plan, part of your wealth plan, right? If you wanted to purchase a home in the next 6 months, I know there's a lot of talk about inflation, right? And like, oh, well, my money's losing, money's just sitting in the bank earning nothing with inflation. I got to put that in the market. But if your time horizon is I want to buy a house here in the next 6 months to a year, the best place to keep that is in cash. You wouldn't be investing those dollars in the market. It's also important to have an emergency fund. So what we really look at is trying to have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses sitting in cash. When you're retired or nearing retired, it's less about having 3 to 6 months and more about 1 to 3 years. Because the market's going to do what the market's going to do. And the market, she does this. She takes you on a little roller coaster, right? But she still generally is going up. I like to think of it, it's like going up a mountain with a yo-yo. You're still moving upwards, but there's these little dips here and there. So what we're experiencing right now, for example, can create a lot of anxiety. We're in what's called a bear market. So a bull market in the market goes up 20% in a year, and a bear market in the market goes down 20%. The easiest way to remember that is a bear will knock you down and a bull will knock you up. You can impress your friends at cocktail parties. You're like, this is some bear market we're in, right? Well, this is now the 16th bear market that we've been in since World War II. So about every 5 to 7 years, the market experiences this level of volatility. And it's hard to feel sometimes like this is abnormal, right? Because it's very stressful, because money is emotional. And when you look at your 401k, or when you look at your IRA or some of your investments, you're like, oh, I've lost money. You haven't lost money unless you take it out. Okay. And the reason why I say that is, even again, when you look at, so this is showing you expansions and contractions since 1950. So again, the market, if you invested in 1950 and never took it out, it doesn't matter what has happened, you've still made significantly more money, right? But let's go to 2000, which is 2002 is when I graduated college. So I know that we talk about 2008, but the real recession was in 2000. But 2008 is so familiar to us because A, it was recent, and it was sudden, and it was highly televised. And the other piece of that was we were also experiencing a housing crisis at the same time, which the stock market and the housing market have only coincided twice in recent history. One was 2008, the other was 1991. So if you're here in the webosphere waiting for that like housing crisis to happen right now, and you're hoarding all your cash because you're like, well, I see the writing on the wall, the market's going to go down. That's not necessarily the case. So again, markets exist in different places at different times. Sometimes they coincide together, but really I think where a lot of the anxiety is and where a lot of the volatility is if you look at this chart here, this is really where the internet came about. And I think that what we're going to start seeing more of is faster, deeper, but shorter cycles. Even, and again, I'm sorry that this has not been updated for 2021 and 2022. 2021 was a great year. 2022 is still also good, right? But if you had money invested in even 2019, I can promise you, you're still up overall. So again, you don't want to be looking at statements constantly. It's about how much money do you need and when do you need it? Okay. And coming back to again on where the market was and what it's doing, this is so yes, I'm a wealth management advisor and hold my series 6, 63, 7, and 65. But I also have a bachelor's degree in consumer psychology and social influence. And I can tell you that suits me better and my clients because really, again, money is emotional. And our role is really to protect you from your own fear and greed. So you're not reacting financially by what's happening. And I get a lot of questions right now of like, well, I'm holding on to cash because the market's so bad right now. But let's think about that. Everything's on sale right now. So it's really a great time to buy. But what ends up happening is people see the volatility in the down market and then they view it as bad. Market's not good or bad. It's bull or bear. It's up and down. If you're trying to buy something, do you want to buy it when it's expensive or when it's cheap? You want to buy it when it's cheap, right? Which is right now. But psychologically, we have this idea of like, oh gosh, the market's so bad right now. When the market starts going up, which is what you saw in 2021, right? What did people do? There's this FOMO of like, well, I got to get in the market because I'm going to miss out. But then they end up buying pretty high, right? You go through these cycles because the market goes through cycles. And one of the things I wanted to kind of point out again, and again, I'll get to other pieces here, but it's important to have the amount of money that you need on hand for the short term, but the rest, let's not worry about it. The first part of financial planning, and whether you're retired or saving or living just now, you got to figure out what is that burn rate. And I would challenge anyone, and I challenge all of my clients to do this, is really look at the last 3 months of your living expenses. I don't like the word budget because I feel it's confining, but let's look at what your lifestyle expense is. And you want to look at what is discretionary and what is essential. Essential expenses are your rent or your mortgage, the roof over your head, your utilities, your car payments, student loans, health insurance, Medicare, prescription drugs, those dollars that have to go out, whether you want them to or not, that's a bill, right? I would also throw in groceries and gasoline, right? You got to get around and you got to eat. Dining out is not essential. Groceries are. Now, you can always say, well, I order all of my food. Then that is then your bill, right? It's not so much that you're dining out, but if you're like, I have meal delivery services, you have to eat. You don't have to do Postmates or Uber Eats or get a steak dinner. That's not essential. That is discretionary and it is a want. That doesn't mean you shouldn't build discretionary into your lifestyle. But let's get really honest with what that is first. And that becomes very, very important when you are nearing retirement or in retirement. You really have to see what does it take to be you on a monthly basis. And so ideally, if you could live off of 60% of your income, save 20%, and have fun with the other 20%, then you're living within your means, right? And the idea of, well, once I'm retired, I'm not going to need as much, that's kind of a myth. Most people don't change their lifestyle drastically from their working years lifestyle to retirement. It might fluctuate 20% in each direction. So if you live off $100,000 a year now, you might be 80% or 120 into retirement. And the reason why there's that little bit of a disparity is maybe your house is now paid off, so you don't have the mortgage. Maybe the kids are out of college, so you don't have that. But you might also be traveling the world now, where you didn't do that before. But it's not like if you live off $100,000 a year now, you're going to all of a sudden live off of $40,000. But you won't really know what you need on how much to save, where to take risk, if you don't know what it takes to be you on a monthly basis. So that's first and foremost. And be honest with yourself. I like to say, I like expensive clothes and cheap jewelry, so I give myself a certain dollar amount, what I call fun money. And I have 2 checking accounts. I have one for my bills, and that's automatic. That's my mortgage. That's my insurance, my car payments, all of that, like adult stuff, right? And then I have my fun money, and that's when I buy tacos and earrings and shoes, things that I love and want, but don't really need. But I now have some guardrails around that spending because I only give myself the same thing every single month. And now I'm making a decision whether or not I'm going to spend those dollars. And so I highly recommend doing that. So it's less about living on a budget, more figuring out your lifestyle, and then setting yourself up for success by, these are my bills, this is my fun. All right. And I would do the same thing in retirement. So when you're looking at, again, in investing and just depending on where you are, is this a long-term investment or a short-term investment? Some of you may be not retired, right? So maybe you're still working and maybe you're putting money into that 401k. Also, given that this is a Parkinson's conversation, let's also talk about some risk management. If you are currently working, I highly, highly recommend reviewing the benefits that you have through your employer, both from what you can contribute to your 401k, what they contribute, but also on your guaranteed issue insurance. Most large companies will offer anywhere from 50 to 60% of disability coverage that they pay, that your employer pays for. And sometimes you can do a buy-up without any questions asked. If you are someone on this call that has Parkinson's and is currently working, Maximize those benefits as much as you can, because if and when you go on claim, oftentimes that is portable. That's if you go on claim, it's not like, because you're no longer working there anyway, you still have that benefit, and it'll usually go up to Social Security age. If you already retired and you don't have access, obviously, to disability because that's to protect your income and you're no longer working, and if you have Parkinson's, there's something that's called long-term care, but again, you wouldn't be eligible for that, right? There's a few ways that you can be eligible, and I think that people should know this. If you are a veteran and you didn't have to serve in war, but you did serve during wartime, the VA does have guaranteed issue benefits for long-term care. The other thing that you can do, which is what we did for my family, is there are insurance products out there that do not require insurability, and they are an investment piece. And that's something that's called an annuity. Now, I know that an annuity has a bad rap here. I know that annuities can have a bad rap because you have, the Susie Ormans out there that, or Ken Fishers that I guess espouse that they're not great. I don't think that there is any good or bad product. I think it's good or bad strategies and how you're using it. But think of an annuity like a pension, but you're funding it with your own dollars. Now, if you're already retired, you would want to explore, do you carve off a lump sum, or do you do something that's ongoing contributions? But the idea of an annuity is you are getting a guaranteed payment no matter how long you live. And why that's really important is when you if and when you run into a care situation, whether you're going into a facility, whether you're doing in-home care, whether you're paying a family member, whatever the case is, I know that there can be a general fear of, I'm going to run out of money. How can I pay for care and pay for my life when I don't know how long I'm going to need it? And that's where long-term care insurance comes in, because now you have a monthly benefit that comes in. Well, with an annuity, you do have a monthly benefit that comes in no matter how long you live. So you don't have to worry about the spend down of your assets to qualify for Medicaid or something to that effect. You can carve off pieces of your retirement or start saving for those things now that will give you a monthly benefit that is not subject to the market, that you will never outlive. You should not put all of your money into an annuity. And I think that that's where people run into issues, is they get sold on this idea of like, oh, guaranteed income. But you still want to have flexibility because you're still getting the same thing every single month, right? You got to still factor inflation. So again, I'm giving you broad ideas, but it's very important that you meet with someone for something that's more personalized, because everyone has their own unique situation and you want to make sure that it's the right strategy for you. But one of the things that I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young does financial analytics, and they actually did a study where they looked at if you had an investment-only strategy, term life and investments, permanent life insurance investments, deferred income annuities, and investments, and then all of them. What is the probability of success that you won't run out of money? And anytime you include annuities or anything that has a guaranteed stream of income, your probability of success is so much higher. Well, the other piece of that, it's like, okay, Charlene, well, that's great. It's with annuities, but I don't have time to put that in place here. Another thing that you could look at, honestly, is rental income. Again, not everything has to be in the market and not everything has to be insurance. You really want to see is, what is the need? How much money do I need? And how much money do I have coming in between Social Security, maybe rental income, maybe a pension, maybe dividends off of a business being sold? You want to first see what you could do with income versus assets. So let's talk about that. How am I on time? Still doing okay? All right. So let's talk about all the places that you can actually save money. Oh, it's this one. Here we go. All right, now bear with me. I'm going to draw with a mouse. And even though I've been doing it for 2 years in this pandemic, it's still awful penmanship. So we have, okay. When it comes to saving money, there are really 3 buckets that you could really save. And this is a pre-tax, and this is 2 post-tax buckets. The first one, pre-tax, okay. The first one is a 401k, which many people have heard of. There's also something that's called a 403b. They do the same thing, just a 401k is if you work for a public or private company, and a 403b is if you work for a nonprofit or a public school. The most that you can put there, saving annually, is $20,500. Once you're over 50, you could add another 6,000. It's called a catch-up provision, because you're like, oh gosh, I didn't save enough money for retirement. The government's like, it's cool, baby girl. Put more money in and catch up, all right? This does not count any of your employer contributions. So this is just your contributions. There's also something that's called an IRA, and an IRA stands for individual retirement account. The most common one is a traditional IRA, and the most that you could put there is $6,000 a year with a catch-up provision of 1. There's also something called a simple IRA, and a simple IRA is what small business owners do in lieu of a 401k. It's what I do for my employees. And the most that you could put there is $14,000 a year with a catch-up provision of 3. There's also something called a SEP IRA, which stands for self-employed pension. It's what self-employed people do. And the most you can do there is 20%. Oops. Oh no. Time out. Katrina, take some questions. I'll be right back. Actually, let's see. I got one here. There we go. Okay. Whew. It's been a day. All right, we're good. We're saved. All right. The most that you could put there is, speaking of risk management, okay, is 20% of your income if you're a sole proprietor. If you're an LLC taxed as an S corporation, you can do 25% of your income up to $63,000 a year. So you really sock a lot of money away as a self-employed individual. Then there's something called Social Security. And I know a lot of people have a lot of thoughts or opinions on Social Security. My thought and opinion is it will still be here for even my generation. But when I do plans for my clients, if you are 55 and older, I'm going to assume that you will get your full benefit. If you are 40 to 45, I'm going to assume at the very least you'll get 75% of your benefit. And if you're under 40, I'm going to assume you get at least 50%. And the reason why I say that is I want to be conservative because who knows what the future holds, right? And there's a lot of questions on whether or not they're going to cut Social Security and do these things. I'm sure we'll see changes over our lifetime, but if you're currently on Social Security or you're like 50, like don't worry about it, you will. Individuals that are under, there might be some changes. I still think we'll have more than 50% of that, but when I'm doing plans, I'm accounting for possibly a reduction. And I also think we'll probably be older when we start taking it. So I'm 42 years old in my plan. I plan on taking Social Security at age 70 because I'm sure that we'll start seeing ages get pushed out. Do I know? I know, but I'd rather err on the side of caution and have too much money than not enough. So that's kind of how I do that. Now in this bucket, all right, money goes in pre-tax. Oh, sorry. The other one here, Social Security, and there's also a variable annuity. And again, an annuity is like a pension. You're just funding it with your own money. And then there's also a pension. All of those go here. And a pension's when a government or a company invests dollars on your behalf. So if you know anyone who's like a state or public employee, they typically have some level of pension. Money goes in pre-tax. And on the way out, you pay what's called income taxes. Now, kind of on Social Security, don't have a crystal ball, but I'm pretty sure taxes are probably going to go up over our lifetime. And the reason why I say that is, I don't have a chart for it, but we're actually at historically the lowest tax bracket we have been in the last 100 years. So taxes will most likely go up, especially since debt to our GDP is really out of whack. So we'll most likely see that over our lifetime. And so again, knowing that this is nationwide, I'm not sure what tax bracket is like in your area, but I'm here on the West Coast. So let's just say you're at a 40% tax bracket by the time you retire between the Fed and the state, okay? That means if you have $1 million in this bucket, how much money do you really have? Now I'm being very simplistic. You're not going to take all 1 million at a time, and give Uncle Sam a check for 400,000. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just showing the net present value of that million. But if you wanted $5,000 a month to live off of, let's say, that's $60K a year. You'd have to pull $100,000 out of your 401k to give you that. And that's why I wanted to kind of share this, because oftentimes people think, well, I don't got to worry about taxes because I'm going to be making less money. You're going to be living off of probably the same amount of money. So 100,000 out of your paycheck versus 100,000 out of your 401k are actually the same. You still need 100,000. All right. This next bucket would be income producing real estate. The other one would also be if you bought and sold your own business. So for example, I'm a business owner. I have 3 employees. So I invest in what's called human capital, which is a creepy way to refer to employees. But I look at it of, I'm going to invest in my business. I'm going to get a better rate of return by investing in my people. So that's where the majority of my investments are actually going, are in salaries, benefits, things like that. This is also if you have a retail account, and a retail account is an investment account that's not necessarily have to be used for retirement. So in a retail account, you can have cash, you could have mutual funds, you could have stock, you could have bonds, anything that you could put in a 401k, you could put in a retail account. The difference is, and of course I can't ask you all these questions because you're not here, but I always like to say, what age do you think you can take this? You can't touch this first bucket into the age of 59 and a half. I always like to let people know the half is because the House wanted to be 59, the Senate wanted to be 60, and they split the baby in committee. So that's why it's random and it's 59 and a half. But you also have to start taking it at the age of 72. And you have to start taking it whether the market is up or down, whether you need it or not. And the reason is you have not paid any taxes on it. And the government's like, we want our money. So they require you to take it. They're called required minimum distributions. Some of you on this call might already be taking required minimum distributions. And you're like, wait a minute, but I had to take it at 70 and a half. You're telling me I had till 72? No, because the reason it just got moved with the Secure Act that passed at the beginning of 2020. And so now if you are not retired, you would take it at 7, you have to taking it at 72. And the Secure Act 2.0, which has not passed yet, they will start grading that out a little bit higher over the years. And the reason is we're living longer. It's not fair to have to take money out sooner if we're living longer, right? So it is going to start grading out. So you will see some changes. So if you're taking it out at 70 and a half, good for you, because you didn't pay any penalties or excise tax. You did the right thing. Now it's 72. This second bucket, though, as you can see, you can take that money whenever you want. So if I buy a bunch of Apple stock today, I can sell it tomorrow. I can sell it a year from now. I don't have any penalties. I could also buy as much. They're not going to cap me at 20,500. I could buy 100,000 of Apple stock. So let's say I did that. Let's say I bought 100,000 of Apple stock and then I sell it for $1.1 million. Well, I made $1 million. Or did I? You're buying it at after-tax dollars, but on the way out, when you sell it, you pay what's called capital gains tax. And the highest capital gains tax right now on the federal side is 20%. So if I did make $1 million, I actually made 800,000. because I'm paying capital gains, right? This last bucket is a Roth IRA, but there are income limits. So if you make too much money, you can't contribute to a Roth. There is also something called a Roth 401k and a Roth 403b, but your company has to offer that. And there's also something called permanent life insurance. And in this bucket, you're using after-tax dollars, and on the way out is tax-free. So, $1 million equals $1 million. So, trick question, in retirement, where do you want most of your money? Income taxable, capital gains, or tax-free? Usually when I ask people, they say tax-free, because I fold them with a smiley face. But you want a little bit of all of them. When we talk about diversification, it's not just about being diverse in stocks and bonds. It's diversification of asset location. You kind of want to have a little bit of all of them. That way, when the market is down, and that way, if the market is up and taxes are low, we would pull from here. When the market is up and taxes are high, we're going to pull from here. But what does the market do, right? We already said that. It goes up and down, right? Still trending upwards. But again, how do we deal with these moments? So let's say you retired here and it's, I don't know, December 2019, and you're like, what could possibly go wrong, right? Done. And then this, of course, is like March of 2020. If all your money was in the market, because this is the market, which leaves you Social Security, pensions, cash, and permanent life insurance. If all your money was in the market, if all your money is in the market right now when you're retired, probably feels pretty uncomfortable, right? And so when we're looking at a plan, again, if you are not retired, you want to have 3 to 6 months of cash on hand. In retirement, you want to have 3 years. So maybe we do that with life insurance. Maybe we do that with annuity incomes. Maybe we do that with how much Social Security that you have. Because again, if you need, let's say, $5,000 a month, and you're getting $2,000 from Social Security, right? You need to figure out, where am I going to get this extra $3,000? So $3,000, actually I did the wrong way because I don't want to do math right now. So let's say you need an extra $2,000, all right? That's $24,000 a year, right? You need to have $72,000 in cash then at all times. You don't need to have your entire portfolio in cash. Let that baby ride. It's going to come back. And that way you would take the money. Oops, where's my mouse? Here we go. Take that money out of your cash, build a little bridge. The market goes back up, sell your 401k, and you put it back. All right. So it really is about, it does not matter what's happening in the market. It doesn't. I know it feels like that. And you want to definitely be strategic in where you have it. But ultimately, the main thing is you need to know, how much money do I need? How much money do I want? Because maybe we don't get everything we want every month or every year if we don't have that cash there. You know what I'm saying? But you always have a roof over your head. You always have your medication. You always have your care. You always have those pieces of the things you need. You'll get back to the wants because the market will come back up. And then you will always be prepared for your wants because you'll have enough cash on what you want and what you need. In a place that's not earning a bunch of money, maybe it's subject to inflation, but again, it's short term. You're only talking 1 to 3 years. And I always like to show this to people because, again, 2008 is so fresh in our heads. This is what the market did January 2007. It bottomed out at the beginning of 2009, right? And this is if you had $100,000 invested in the market. If you invested those dollars and then maybe panicked and then put the rest of your 401k statements in the drawer and look at it, right? Over the next 10 years, you would have made $138,000. For the individuals that saw the money that went down, again, got scared, what'd they do? They pulled it out. But then they saw the market going back up. They're like, oh, it's getting better. So then they took the money out and then they made those losses permanent. And then they bought a little bit higher, then they sold it, right? A little bit, not too much. And then it went up, they made $55,000. I've met people who think that they're very, very smart because they like, well, I took my money out of the market. I didn't lose anything after that. They actually made those losses permanent, and they definitely lost money. They look at it that they didn't see their balance go down anymore, but the balance is arbitrary if you don't take it out. So again, the idea is you want to always make sure, I'm going to see if I can just get like a new one versus erasing this. Let's see. Can I do? No, shoot. So that's a lot to erase. The end of the day, when you're looking at your risk tolerance, it's not just about being 50-50 balanced, 50-50 stocks, 50-50 bonds, something to that effect. Your whole portfolio does need to do that. You really want to be almost looking like as if, this is when you're retired from a distribution standpoint. You almost want to have like 3 different portfolios. You want to have a short-term 1 to 3 that's in cash or cash equivalents. Maybe you're doing some bond laddering. And then you want to have something that's 4 to 9 that maybe is a little bit more moderate, not necessarily conservative, but moderate. And then you want to have a 10-year plus super aggressive. Because even if you're 70 years old, you still might live another 20, 25 years. And if you're in a conservative portfolio because you're quote unquote retired, you do run the risk of running out of money. So you really just want to have those 1 to 3 years in cash or cash equivalents, and maybe like 4 years that's maybe moderately aggressive or balanced, but let the rest of it ride. And you want to just keep filling up those cups every year. So you spend that year, what do? You capture the wins in that higher market and you put that back into that cash bucket. And that's just kind of how you continue to replenish that. And I think, one last thing, and then I'll open up for questions. Let's talk about asset allocation. There are 9 asset classes that you can invest in. 10 if you count crypto, but we don't. Crypto is still an unregulated asset, and it's not to say it doesn't have a future in planning, but until we can all agree what the value is, just know it's speculative. And my advice would be don't put more than 2% of your overall net worth in cryptocurrency. Look at it as gambling and be okay with that. And I grew up in the Bay Area, so I could say, I remember .com. During the 90s, anything that had a .com, there was no real valuation, but you just started inflating, and there was some winners, but a lot of losers. It wasn't that we didn't think that the internet had a huge role in our lives. We just didn't really know what it was then. And I kind of feel that that's the case with crypto. So just be careful on that. So crypto is not in this, but there are 9 asset classes that you can invest in. And each one of these asset classes represents a different color. And I like using this because we call this the quilt, because that's what it looks like. But there's no rhyme or reason about it. There's no patterns, right? And the reason you can pick any color. So let's go international merging. And it's like, woo, that's a roller coaster, right? Let's pick another one. Let's go real estate. Okay. Oh God. Oh God. So you see what I'm saying? Like when you follow one asset class, one stock, that's what you're going to feel. When you have a variety or a mix of assets, you spread the risk around. So think of it like entering an elevator with 1 cable or 17 cables. Which one feels safer, right? This cable breaks, boop, that's not great, right? If cable snaps here, it's scary, but it's not the end of the world. And that's really where you want to start looking at investing in multiple asset classes. And the reason why I say this here is there's going to be winners and losers. So if you do follow the white one is at least less volatile. And that's a combination of all of those. And that's when we really look at, again, a diversified portfolio. And so you really want to see what is your risk level, and your risk level really should be dependent on your time horizon. So again, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 9, 10 plus. And with that, I will open up for questions. Hopefully this is what y'all were looking for.
Thanks, Charlene. I found that very informative. Thank you so much. So we did have a couple questions come in. I think a lot of people were excited about the idea of an annuity and the guaranteed payment. And I've been asked, can a current IRA or a 401k be converted to an annuity?
Indeed, it can. And again, it's just going to be dependent on what type of annuity. So a variable annuity, for example, is in the market. So if you are currently invested, right? Or you have a not necessarily a longer time horizon, but you kind of want to, it's not like I need these dollars a year from now, right? So you would want something that's deferred. If something's deferred, I would look at putting it variable. So having in the market, it still has base guarantees in it. And you also do want to, they're contracts. So again, definitely work with an advisor that you trust, because it is a contract. So you want to make sure that it is going to do what you want it to do. Does that make sense? So you can, it will be still subject to required minimum distributions. You still can't touch it till 59.5 if it is an IRA or 401k. And again, look at maybe, does it make sense to roll all of it? Does it make sense to roll some of it? So if there's variable, there's also fixed. A fixed annuity is going to have a fixed interest rate market. Those are not very attractive right now because interest rates are not very attractive right now, right? But there's also some, one of the reasons why I align myself with Northwestern Mutual is they have it based off of their general account and their life insurance, which has a dividend of 5%. And so you get the dividend on top of that. Like it has a base level guarantee in it of a fixed rate, which right now I think is 3.25, which isn't super high, right? So that's what I'm saying. You want to make sure that if you're doing something fixed, is there additional benefits on top of that? The other thing with an annuity is it also provides a death benefit. And again, when there's issues of insurability and you do want to provide any type of legacy, an annuity, don't have to prove any insurability. And then that person can get that death benefit in a lump sum versus waiting for your 401k. Does that make sense? Which then you're taking required minimum distributions and subject to income taxes and all those other things. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but it's important to really sit down with someone that you trust and view it as the contract that it is. Kind of like if any of you have a pension, it's like 46 pages, right? You want to just make sure that it's going to do what you want it to do. So is it fixed? Is it variable? When can I take it out? And just know it will still be income taxable because your 401k is still income taxable. You can also set up something called a non-qualified variable annuity, which you're using after-tax dollars. You're locking it up so it's growing without paying any taxes. And then when you pull it out, it's based off of the proportion amount of what was earned versus what you put in. So let's say you put in, I'm just going to use big numbers because it's easy. Let's say you put $500,000 in, and now when you go to take it out, it's $1 million, right? So 50% of it was your money, 50% was the gain in the contract. Well, if you want to take out $5,000 a month forever, 2,500 of that will be taxable. The other 2,500 will not. So yeah. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I think you did. One thing I am hearing a lot from you is that it is very personal. For sure, diversify. It's important to understand some of the basics you spelled out for us today, like, what is your need versus what you want, making sure that you have a cushion to cover your expenses, what you need, and then what you have left to save to really work with somebody to personalize it and diversify it across different accounts. We also got a question. How would you advise a 30-year-old Parkinson's person with little income? How can this person still save or invest and not lose Medicare benefits? And there's a second part to this question, but just starting there, how can somebody 30 years old, little income, still save or invest and not lose Medicare benefits?
So as far as, I'm not as familiar on what the limitations are to your Medicare benefits but I would try to work at least with, if there's not a lot of income, you don't want to be hiring an attorney. If there's resources, because the reason why I say that is I want to make sure that of what you're aware of, how much money you can and cannot bring in and what can and cannot be in your name. And that really then comes down to trusts. So you can always have money in a trust with a favorable trustee. And when I say favorable, technically to have something out of your name and out of your estate, you're not supposed to have any terms or be able to dictate what money you get. Does that make sense? But if you have a favorable trustee, whether it's a partner, whether it's a sibling or a best friend, you guys could have conversations. Does that make sense? But you can't be directing what is happening in there. Because that's how you have investments. Like my nephew, for example, is special needs, non-communicative, 9-year-old, still wears diapers. We set up a trust for him that is invested, that's not being used right now, but it's not in his name. My sister, who is his mom, is the trustee of it, and she can be. So obviously she's going to be the trustee is always going to be acting in your best interest. But as far as 30 years old, doesn't make a lot of income, you would be surprised, and I don't want to say this flippantly, but really look at what is it that you need and what is it that you want, and where is there a gap? Is there a gap? Because $25 a month still adds up to $300 a year, which might not seem like a lot, right? But you're still 30. Time is on your side. And even if you do, $50, a month, that's $600 a year. That does add up to real money depending on where you're putting it. So if you put it in a Roth IRA, for example, if you're already low income, you're not already paying a lot of taxes, you could put that money, you don't need the tax deduction, right? Because you don't get one with a Roth. But then that money is growing tax deferred and you don't pay taxes on the way out of it. And so compounding is huge. Time is your rate of return when you are a young person, and you'd be amazed on how much little by little. I set up a Roth when I was 22 years old, and I put $250 a month into it, which was, I was making $18 an hour at the time, but I didn't have a huge overhead, right? So I didn't need a lot of stuff. I didn't enjoy the world of expensive clothing then. And like I cooked my own food, and like I didn't go out to eat a lot. I didn't drink, so it's like I didn't have a huge overhead. So I put $250 into a Roth because some guy told me to. Like, he was like, you should do that. And I didn't even know what it was. But 10 years later, again, not the best way to use it, but I did end up cashing out of that and buying a duplex. I would have never been able to have those dollars that then turned into it was like $32,000 over a 10-year period of time, because it was in the market and I was putting $250 away a month, which was not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. But I was then able to do that because I was consistent. And I think that when you don't have a lot of money, just starting with what can you do, even if it's $10, and you'd be amazed. And when I say you'd be amazed is, my ex-husband used to stop at Plaid Pantry, which is like a 7-Eleven or like a convenience store here in Portland. He used to stop there every day after work and buy a pack of peanut M&Ms and a bottle of white wine. And I just remember growing so frustrated because he kept on saying we were broke. And I'm like, well, you spend, he was like, well, it's nothing. It's just, it's $12. I'm like, it's $12 a day, which is $60 a week, which is $240 a month on white wine and M&Ms. Like, again, is that really important to you? And if it is, feed that. But if it's not, it's probably just mindless spending that we probably do more, that we beat ourselves up going to brunch with our girlfriends and spending $50, but we don't blink an eye at the $4 Starbucks. You know what I mean? So buy the $4 Starbucks because it brings you joy, not because you ran out of time and forgot to make coffee. Those are different financial decisions. And that's why I think separating bills and fun money, because now with your fun money, you're making a choice. I choose to have this Starbucks coffee. And if I keep doing it, then I'm not going to get brunch with my girlfriends, right? And that's why I said, I don't want to be flippant about it, because that's a real piece of, but I don't know what your income limits are. So I would certainly say first, see what you need. And then I would say talk to, and I'm sure there's some nonprofits, Katrina, I'm not sure if you know that you have access to like Medicare advice, because that I don't know.
Yeah.
I know enough to get myself in trouble.
Yeah. The second part of her question, I think you touched on it. She asked, how would you advise this person's parents who will be impacted in helping to support this person? A special needs trust?
I would say, yeah. So it doesn't even need to be special needs, but having a trust that is not in her name, but that she's the sole beneficiary of it, would be very, very important. There's also some things that they could do in gifting, that could help them from an estate tax, perspective. That's really what I would explore. Is you want to make sure that things are not in her name to impact the benefits that she would receive, but also you want to make sure that then there's still enough that's there. Okay, but trusts are the way to do it, because if you're just then having someone give you money, then you run into gifting limits and things like that. And again, you would have to be audited, but you still want to make sure that then that no one's giving you more than $15,000, $16,000 a year per person.
So we had somebody asked us, are you open for new clients?
Yes, I am. And I'm licensed in multiple states. And I also have a team of people as well. So it's not just me here. But yes, I'm here in the Portland area and I'm licensed in, I think, 25 different states. And then I also have colleagues all over the country as well that are fantastic humans. If we're not in the same state and you want like a person in front of you, because and I'm also free to talk to. So just so you know, I don't charge for financial planning. I ultimately get paid because you're investing or doing other things, but there's a lot of recommendations I make that we're never compensated on. But that's not why I got into this. I got into it again to make sure that the plan works. And as you do well, we always do well. So we're always free to talk to. So certainly happy to help. And again, I got into this business because no one talked to my family. And I know that the conversations are different when your options are limited, when things haven't been put in place before a diagnosis. So please know that that's near and dear to my heart. And that's why I do this. So I'm very familiar with it, which is why we did annuities with my mom. Because at the end of the day, we're like, we need to have income come in, right? Because I want them to spend their money now and enjoy their lives, while my mom can still do some stuff, and that's the other thing. You got to make sure you're setting some fun for you now. Don't worry about someday, yes, we want to save for that future self, but today is today and you got to have a good day.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I definitely do. We have one more time for one more question. Yeah. Before we get to that question, I have been asked about your contact information. I can share that.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Email is best, because then I have a team that can coordinate.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
The last question we have some time for today is, the question is, I have a term life that is eligible to be converted to whole life. Mm-hmm. I have the disability clause, but I work part-time. I cannot use the benefit then. Is that correct?
I would have to know who the carrier is to be able to really advise on that. One other thing to mention is I do work with Northwestern Mutual, but I'm not captive to them. I'm independent. So on things like that, I can easily become the agent of record and be able to speak on your behalf, like get documentations to actually explore what those things are. Same thing on converting it. You can talk about whether that makes sense to do it or not. Converting it, there gives you two benefits. One, it gives you a permanent death benefit if a benefit is important to you for legacy or your beneficiaries. The other piece of it is it's a nice place to shovel cash in very tax efficient ways to use during those stock market declines. So when we're talking about having that 1 to 3 years of cash, it doesn't have to be cash in the bank. It could be cash accumulation in a life insurance contract. But as far as the disability rider, again, depending on the carrier, you may still be able to get a partial disability benefit. I know Northwestern does that. Again, I don't know. I would have to see who the carrier is to see what their definition of disability is, what their definition of partial disability is, because it's, again, their contracts. So you want to just see, is that covering what you think it is? But happy to review it for you, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Charlene, thank you so much for joining us today and for answering all of the questions. I did put the email in the chat for anybody that is interested in reaching out to Charlene. That is her email now in the chat. This session has been recorded, so we will be adding it to our website starting tomorrow, where we will also put the PDF that Charlene referenced throughout the presentation. Last month, we went over estate planning and some of the questions that came up today about a trust. If you didn't get a chance to watch that, you can go to briangrant.org/webcasts, and you'll see last month we did talk about estate planning, and which included some information about establishing trusts. So with that, I want to thank you again, Charlene. Join us next month, Wednesday, August 10th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be joined by physical therapist Jenny Wilhelm, who will be talking about starting a walking program for people with Parkinson's, some tips and advice and some things to consider. And with that, Charlene, thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care, everyone.